think my clock says 12 p.m. We can go ahead and start. So welcome everyone. On behalf of the Center for Urban Language Teaching and Research at Georgia State University, I welcome you to the 6th Annual World Languages Week. CULTR, as the center is known, is one of 16 federally funded Title VI language resource centers in the United States. CULTR has created the unique identity around serving the needs of all students and the community they represent by helping to promote language learning as part of 21st century global education. Guided by its core value of access, advocacy, outreach, and research, CULTR has gained national reputation for innovative approaches to promoting access to language education for all students, regardless of their socioeconomic and ethnic backgrounds. I am Murad Dakhli, Clinical Professor of International Business and Director of the Master of International Business at the Robinson College here at Georgia State University. I am also a visiting professor at Shanghai Business School in China and serve as faculty director of the study abroad programs in Morocco, Dubai, and South Africa. I'd like to thank you for being here with us today for the Intercultural Competence Panel, which I will be moderating. Before introducing our panelists, I'd like to address a couple of housekeeping technical issues. All attendees will remain muted throughout the entire session. If for some reason your connection is interrupted during the panel discussion, simply rejoin by using the same link you used previously. If the event reaches its capacity, attendees may tune in via live stream on YouTube. Our panel discussion of approximately 35 to 40 minutes will be followed by Q&A with you, the students and attendees. Students might submit questions throughout the course of the discussion and after in the Q&A box by clicking on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. If you like questions you see, click the thumbs up icon to promote this question to the top of the list. I'd like to draw your attention back to the event website. There, you will find instructions to download the app Goose Chase. Students can sign up today to join a virtual scavenger hunt as prizes will be awarded to the top scoring schools. All right, so now let's go ahead and meet our panelists. I will briefly introduce you. Yoshi Demoto has served as the executive director of the JASG, that is the Japan American Society of Georgia, since 2008. Before joining JASG, Yoshi was accepted in the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program, a renowned Japanese government program aimed to promoting grassroots international exchange between Japan and people from other nations. Laverne Perry, welcome, serves as the Assistant Director of Artist Relations and Education Programs at the Rialto Center for Arts at Georgia State University. She collaborates with the Executive Director in programming national and international programs. Laverne has served on grant panels for the Fulton County Arts Council, the City of Atlanta Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs, South Arts Jury Showcase panelists, and the Kentucky Arts Partnerships. And as director of the French desk at TIER, a global talent acquisition firm, Hélène Touré, welcome, taps her experience in both French and American cultures to help French companies find their best fit in the US. Prior to her work at TIER, YER, I think that's how it goes, Hélène was the executive director of the Alliance Française. So before we proceed to the question, I would like to ask you to please briefly share with us and with the audience some more items about your background, and especially focusing on those items that relate to intercultural competence. I'm going to go ahead and start with Laverne first.
Thank you so much. In my position as the Assistant Director of Artist Relations and Education Programs here at the Rialto Center at Georgia State University, I work very closely with international artists who tour the globe with their magnificent programming. I've worked with artists from Morocco, from Iran, Canada, from Japan, Brazil, and it has been the most amazing experience having the opportunity to learn about different cultures from around the world.
Wonderful. I want your job. Thank you. Laverne? Sorry, you were Hélène.
Hi, everybody. As a French citizen, I left France very early on, and I lived in many different countries. I was teaching French. So I lived in Cambodia, Australia, Togo, and Lomé. And so I was confronted to other cultures very early on, and I think I've learned a lot about me as a French person and my identity while being on those journey. But it was also always about teaching about my culture while learning about somebody else's culture.
Very nice. It reminds me of the saying, you find yourself when you travel abroad.
It's so true.
Very good. Yoshi, please.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so happy, and it's an honor to be on an all-star panel with all of you. So, but a little bit about myself. Actually, I was born in Japan. My mother is American and my father is Japanese. So I actually got a chance to grow up in both cultures and both countries. So I've always had an interest of basically bringing together the Japanese and Americans together. And my work right now with the Japan America Society, that's what I do every day, as trying to bring together the people of Japan and Georgia through business, cultural exchange, education, and certainly promoting friendship and bringing people together socially as well. So I think in today's world where there are kind of less of an importance on borders, and I think it's more important than ever to be able to understand various cultures of the world, and be able to have some intercultural competence when dealing with folks, not only from people from other countries, but also within your own country too. So it's a little bit about myself, but look forward to talking a little bit more into depth about all the things that we all do to try to bring people together.
Very good, very good. Actually, that's a good segue into our first question, Yoshi, and I'll let you continue this train of thought and answer the first question. In your opinion, what are the 2-3 key attributes and qualities of intercultural competence or sensitivity?
Great. Yeah, I'll just continue on, I guess. But yeah,
yes.
Maybe 2 or 3 characteristics that's I think crucial in intercultural competence is empathy. So you definitely will have to be able to understand what your counterpart is thinking, the kind of the background they're from, how they understand not only language but other communication styles, and kind of how they kind of respond to kind of different stimuli, I think. So certainly empathy, kind of knowing about kind of your counterparts, kind of characteristics, and then adaptability and flexibility. Certainly when you're working with people from different countries, different backgrounds, they're not going to have the same values, or they're not going to have the same ways of thinking, right? So you're going to have to be able to adapt kind of your own way of thinking and be flexible and be able to kind of match your mentality with their mentality. So certainly being able to adapt in different situations, very, very key. And then last but not least, I think patience. It is going to be a very, I think, no matter who you work with, it's a challenge when you're communicating in different languages, certainly, and then different cultures, right? So being patient and kind of understanding that it is difficult and it is a challenge. It's not supposed to be easy to work and communicate with people from different countries. So, being patient and not getting frustrated just because, your first time go at it, or, second or third time, doesn't go well. But, being patient and being persistent, I think is definitely key too.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to ask Laverne to follow up, and the same question, 2 or 3 key attributes that you feel are key to intercultural competence and sensitivity.
I would agree with Yoshi. First, you have to have respect for others. That is very important. And you also have to be willing to be open and to learn from others, and also to teach others about your culture as well. And you do really have to be patient, because it's not a quick process. It's not an easy process sometimes. And you also have to be willing to compromise and just realize that your culture and your way is not the only way, that there are so many cultures and so many ways of thinking that we should be open to all of them.
Very well said. Thank you. And Ellen?
And yeah, I would compliment. For me, curiosity is very important. Always be eager to learn, to educate yourself, to try to understand the context. I think what's very important too is the ability to question yourself first and not take things personally. It's very tempting to do so, but you have to question your own way of doing things before judging how others are doing it. I think that's really key into this type of relationship. And the last one, I would say, cultivate a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. There's always something to learn from the other, whether he's from your own culture or not. So I think that also is very key in those relationships.
Very nice, very nice. And I love what you just said. And I mean, between what Yoshi shared with us, empathy, adaptability and flexibility, patience when things don't go your way. I think that was supported by Laverne, respect for others. That's an important point. Openness to others also, and their backgrounds, and willingness to compromise. That's quite an interesting point right there. And then, Elena, you complement that by curiosity, being curious about others and willing to educate yourself, ability to question yourself before questioning others. That's some food for thought there, and a growth mindset. So that's quite a bag of tools there that I hope we come out with from that first question. Thank you. I'd like now to kind of zoom in on experiences that you all had over the past year. And for this question, I'd like to start with you, Laverne. Describe a challenging situation you faced in your professional life where your cultural competence was essential in overcoming the issue.
Wow. I worked with a very popular world music artist, and the artist was absolutely wonderful to work with. But his management was not used to working with women in positions of authority. And in my organization, I have a bit of authority. And during the pre-planning process, he questioned absolutely everything we discussed via email, everything. And we eventually got to a place where he accepted what I was telling him about our organization and the regulations that we have to follow, and he didn't question everything. So we fast forward a few weeks later for their arrival, for their performance at the theater. And I usually greet the artist at the front door as they arrive. And I introduced myself, and he said, "Are you the Laverne I've been emailing all this time?" And I said, "Yes, it's so nice to meet you." And then he says, "You're a lot younger than I expected." And, his demeanor changed a little. And he was an older man, and his generation, he was used to working with mostly men. So not only am I not a man, but I was younger than he was. So essentially, I was a woman telling an elder what to do. And he wasn't very comfortable with that. And so, we were going to spend the entire weekend together. So I wanted to make him comfortable. And I made several attempts to start up a conversation. And we actually bonded over something that we became instant friends for the rest of the weekend. And it's something that's very simple, and you would think it would be this ornate thing. We both loved the Game of Thrones TV show. And that was our bridge. That was our bridge to establishing a great working relationship. We're actually still friends on social media now. And something as simple as a television show, or you like the same song, or you like the same color shoes or something, that could be something that can bridge a relationship. So sometimes you have to find a common ground that you can build on, no matter how small, so that you can build a rapport and build a relationship and start to understand each other's cultures. I mean, I've been invited to South Africa. Of course, I can't go now, but I've been invited as their guest. So whenever I'm there, he told me, "Give us a call and we'll show you around."
Wonderful, wonderful. Great story. Thank you, Laverne. Thank you, Laverne. Elaine, I'm going to ask you to follow up with your own challenging situation.
So I deal with those challenges every single day in my career, and I will pick up on what you said, Laverne, and building bridges. And that's what we do in our company. We build bridges between our clients that are French companies that are headquartered in France, that have their group vision and that they have their ambitions and the reality of the market in the United States. And as much as a French company who's going to start operations in China or India is going to make a real preparation for the cultural shock, they never, ever do this when they come to the United States because they think we're kind of a similar culture, and we're absolutely not. Like, we don't manage people the same way, we don't deal with business the same way, we don't treat clients the same way. So that's what I do every day, is trying to explain the cultural differences. But I think one of the challenges or examples that I have to deal every day is that usually when a company comes in the market in the United States, the first thing is, in terms of marketing, they think they can just translate everything and that their market can go to, their product can go to market. And that's where it starts. Like, I have to explain, no, you have to rethink your whole marketing because you're not addressing the same client. It's not the same culture, and whatever works in France is not going to work here. It's not just a question of translating. It's a question of understanding your market and the culture in which this market is evolving. So that would be my everyday challenge.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Elaine. And that's an interesting point there. Maybe we'll pick up on it later on. The difference between the language aspect, the translation aspect, and the culture, and how much culture is embedded into the language and sometimes we underestimate and we assume that just by translating, as you said, we covered it, and that is not the case. Very good. Yoshi, can you please share with us your own experience?
Sure. So I guess to kind of add on to both Laverne and Ellen, so I'll kind of tell a funny personal story very quickly, and then kind of something more kind of professionally too. But growing up both in Japan and the United States, we working with different types of people, different languages or whatnot. I remember at one time being in Japan, I was asked, what kind of food would you like for lunch? At the time I was a little younger, but I was craving tacos. The tacos that we're used to here. But so I said, want to get some tacos. So tacos in Japanese is takosu, but takosu could also mean vinegared pickled octopus too, right? So so when I asked, let's get some tacos for lunch in Japan, come to my surprise, I got a bowl of vinegar and pickled octopus instead of the tacos that I was expecting. So I was in for a big surprise, but I still enjoyed the lunch, but it was just a different kind of lunch, I guess. So that's kind of, I guess, an example of, I guess it's a challenge with language, but kind of more on the professional side. With our organization, we are a nonprofit organization that heavily relies on membership recruitment and sponsorship. Our members and our sponsors are like our customers and our clients. So certainly working with different Japanese and American companies, there's a lot of kind of cultural aspects to kind of deal with when you're working on recruitment of companies to be part of our organization. So one example is in the Japanese culture, you have to be very methodical. You have to be very patient. The way you get customers or clients, or companies just to join your membership, you have to go, very slow paced, and it takes a long time to kind of get that trust. But once you get that trust and that partnership in place, it is typically a lifelong or very long-term relationship that you cultivate, right? So we were working with one particular Japanese company that they were a potential member, potential sponsor of ours, and they were taking, as many Japanese companies do, some time to make a decision on whether to, become a member and a sponsor or not. But at the same time, they were asking for our assistance and our help on kind of, whether it was translations from Japanese to English, vice versa, or helping out with kind of different kind of business needs here and there. And instead of us, kind of turning them away, saying, "Oh, you're not a customer of ours yet, or you're not, one of our members yet, so we can't help you." We went above and beyond and trying to help them out with their needs. and then eventually, after some time and helping them out with kind of various things they requested, they did become a member and a sponsor of ours, and basically, essentially, a customer of ours. So being able to understand kind of the way not only people think, but how companies and kind of business culture works in another country is really essential in being able to get what you want and some of your objectives done professionally at the same time.
Very good. Great example. Very, very nice. And remind, if you don't mind me sharing with you, Laver, you were talking about the gender issues and status issues. I lived in Kuwait for about 6 years. And one of the biggest challenges for American businesswomen who go to the Middle East, some of the most conservative societies, and back to what Yoshi was saying about the patience and a point you mentioned, openness to others, being able to understand where that comes from, I think, and finding that common ground. It's a great example, but it is a challenge, and it can be very difficult sometimes to overcome those biases that you are faced with in other countries sometimes. Very good. I'd like to move to our next question and ask you all, how does intercultural communication play a role in your current position, and how does it manifest itself? So it's this kind of related to our previous question, and I'm going to start with Ellen first.
So again, it's every day for me. So it manifests itself with me dealing with my client. So usually when a French company has operations in the US, they want to develop a local team. So we are looking to hire Americans that are going to work for those French companies. So it goes both ways. And I think what's really important in me communicating with my client is to make them understand that the culture here is not better or not as good as France. It's just different, and they have to understand how different it is. And it works the same way for candidates that we recruit. They have to understand that it will require them an extra effort to work for a company from a different culture. And then as an employee, all my colleagues are from Europe. So when I coming in the office, I hear Italian, Swedish, Dutch. So it's also there with my colleagues, like they are all from a different culture, and I have to be aware that we're different. I hear how they interact with their client, and it's very different from the way I interact with my clients. So it's making sure that I don't fall back into stereotypes and just always be open to the fact that we're different.
Yes, very good, very good. And I'm going to ask Yoshi to follow up on that question of how does intercultural communication play a role in your current position, and how does it manifest itself?
Oh yeah, so just like Ellen, I deal with intercultural communication every single day, and believe it or not, everyone tuning in, whether you're a panelist or you're just a participant kind of watching the webinar, you deal with intercultural communication every day, whether you work with other countries or not, whether you know it or not, you deal with it every day. So just something to kind of put it out there. But certainly, within our own organization, we have different cultures represented within our own staff, our board of directors, different committees that we have within our group. So kind of, communication internally, we certainly have to deal with different types of communication and, what types of communication works well with certain people and not with others, right? So that's internally, but certainly externally too. Working with different Japanese and American companies, organizations, government entities, consulates and embassies, there's a lot to deal with types of communication that people respond to the most effectively, right? So when you're working with that, certainly whether it's business, culture, or education, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of customs and etiquette you have to deal with too. So it's not just about language when you're dealing with communication. There's a lot of hidden, I think, cultural aspects that you certainly have to navigate to be able to communicate effectively. And how does it manifest itself? Kind of at the macro level, kind of the bird's eye view for what we do is we play a small part of this, but Georgia and Japan, we have a very, very close relationship. Japan is actually Georgia's #1 foreign investor. There are over 600 Japanese affiliated companies in our state. They hire 36,000 people within our state. and those Japanese companies have invested nearly $11 billion in our state's economy. So there's a lot happening between Japan and Georgia, and we've played a very small role in kind of helping out with that relationship and kind of fostering the close ties that Japan and Georgia share. But I think the more effective and more efficient kind of intercultural communication that you can navigate, there are big rewards kind of at the end of the tunnel too. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's more important than ever to be able to understand different cultures of the world.
Very good, very good. I wasn't aware of that, the extent of the presence of the Japanese business community in Georgia. That's quite impressive. Very nice. I know one of the companies we visited is Toto, which is one of the first Japanese to invest here many years ago, one of the first movers. And we took our students there, our massive international business students, to visit the company there. And all right, so Laverne.
Yes, intercultural communication plays a very significant role in my current position. I sometimes work with people who speak very limited English, and I only speak very limited Spanish, and I know one sentence in French. Je m'appelle Laverne, for those of you who speak French.
Très bien.
And sometimes when we have to communicate, it's hard. We use translation apps, but as we know, they don't always have an accurate translation. And sometimes we might act out what we're asking for, like we're playing a game of charades, but you have to be very careful. Especially me, because I speak with my hands a lot. And sometimes me speaking with my hands to me is an innocent thing, but to someone else, it might not be, so you have to be very careful and cognizant of hand gestures and movements. And, if you don't know, it goes back to communication. Ask, is it okay for me to do this? Or do you understand what I mean? Or can you show me? Or can you tell me how to say this in your language? And so to be open and willing to not be right. And sometimes you might make a mistake that they find is funny. And sometimes you just have to laugh along with it.
Yes. I like that attitude. And I'm sure all our panelists would agree. I take my students to different countries, and people are quite understanding and they're quite open. And as you said, sometimes they laugh it off and they will share with you, and it becomes a topic of conversation. Very good, very well. My next question is about lessons learned, and I would like to start with you, Yoshi. What is one of the most valuable lessons that you have learned over the course of your life and career about relating with others who have different cultural backgrounds from your own?
I think there are many lessons to be learned, but I guess one thing is that intercultural competence or intercultural communication is not about yourself or your own culture. I think it's more about your counterpart. The more you understand about your counterpart's culture, his or her background, kind of their value system, I think the more effective communicator you can be. But at the same time, the more effective intercultural communicator you are, the more you learn about other cultures and other value systems, the more you learn about yourself, actually, right? And the more you learn about your own culture. And I think Ellen kind of talked about this a little bit too, but yeah, so the more experience you have with different cultures of the world, I think the more you learn about yourself. But also, I think when you think about intercultural communication or intercultural competence, people may kind of pigeonhole themselves into what people from different countries or people with different nationalities, how they think and their value systems. But actually, I think it goes much kind of beyond that. Whether it's geographic in nature, gender, ethnicity, generational, or even within different industries in one particular country, there's a lot that you deal with. Certainly in the United States, with a lot of different kind of cultural backgrounds represented. When you're working with people with different value systems, whether it's the West Coast or Northeast or Midwest, it's very different from the Southeast, right? And how people think here in the South. So Certainly we talked about it a little bit too, gender wise, there's a lot to kind of navigate through with kind of different cultural norms and values that males and females have, ethnicity. So with whether you have a different kind of ethnic background, I think that has a lot to do with different things. Generational, certainly with a lot of not only companies, but government or within your own families. People have different generations, and a lot of companies nowadays talk about, oh, how do we work with millennials, and what's the best way to kind of engage with kind of young people, right? So I think there's a lot to deal with different ages represented, and even within kind of different industries, whether you're in government or insurance or accounting or manufacturing. There's different cultures represented within particular industries too. So there's a lot that's navigated within intercultural communication, and it's not just about different nationalities and countries. So there's lessons to be learned forever and ever. So I think the more you experience, the better. Kind of you understand kind of different cultural norms represented, not only from different countries, but all the different things we just talked about too.
Very good, very interesting, and especially kind of the idea that it is not just about country of origin. It's a lot more than that. It's age, it's regional affiliation, obviously, and it's gender, and all of these factors kind of that are integrated together. Laverne, would you like to follow up on that question of some of the most valuable lessons that you have learned over the course of your life careers in terms of how do you relate and interact with those who have different cultural backgrounds from your own?
Yeah, I've learned, I'll say the most powerful thing, and it's very simple, that I've learned, although we come from different backgrounds and cultures and generations and socioeconomic statuses, most of us have more similarities than differences when it comes down to it. And it's those common similarities, no matter how small, that can open a conversation to a broader understanding of each other's cultures and life. And that's the most powerful. It's a very simple thing, but it's the most powerful thing that I've learned throughout my life and career.
Very well, very well said, very well said. Elaine would like to follow up with the same question about lessons learned.
Yes, and I totally agree with the two of you, and I will pick up on what Yoshi said, but I'll give a very personal example. But my ex-husband was from Guinea in West Africa. And when we got married, we had limited means, so I prepared our wedding invitation cards, and I had put myself in the picture of France, and I had put him in the picture of Africa. And I didn't think much about it. He was very upset about it. He asked me why I didn't put myself in the picture of Europe, and I said, well, it's because I'm French. He said, well, I'm from Guinea, and that's how I identify. And so that was the biggest lesson for me. No matter how open-minded you think you are, because you've been exposed to other culture, or because you're yourself a foreigner, you are always biased by your own culture, by the way you've been educated. And so you have to educate yourself all your life long to be open and work on your intercultural competence. Because we all think we're not racist, but we all have the potential to be racist if we don't keep working on ourselves. So that was the biggest lesson ever learned. I still feel terrible about it, but that's how you learn. So every mistake is also a way to learn.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And one, I think, important point you make is some of us who, maybe travel or maybe interact frequently with others from different countries and cultures like Laverne here, or have a mixed heritage like Yoshi. And, sometimes we feel that, we're comfortable, we're fine. And it's something to keep in mind. We are learning, and you never stop learning. There's always something there new that surprises you. And sometimes I travel and I make a blunder, and it's like, what, maybe I should have known better, but I will learn from it. And I think thank you, Elaine, for sharing that, personal example and experience. And I think to remind us that you never stop learning. That's how it goes. Thank you. Okay. All right. I would like to maybe zoom in on the language piece of it, and I'm going to start with Laverne for this question. What are your thoughts about the claim that as English becomes more widely spoken, some may think that cultural competence is less critical?
Well, cultural competency will still be very important. The English language is a way to communicate, but it doesn't replace cultural competency. It doesn't at all. And we still need to be aware of cultural sensitivities, and we still need to be aware. We still need to be culturally competent. We still, like you said, we have to work on it every day, continue to learn, and we have to do our absolute best to continue to be respectful and open to others. I mean, the English language is a tool to communicate. It doesn't make someone's cultural identity less important, and it doesn't replace it. It's just a means of communication.
Thank you. Thank you. And Ellen, if you could follow up on that item about the English becoming more widely spoken. So why do we need to worry?
Oh, you need to worry. I think it just makes the overall experience so much different if you can talk a little about the other language or have a little word. So I always give the example, and whenever I say I'm French, I always get those stories. Oh, my uncle went to Paris in 1979. So whenever I'm told those stories, I always ask, but how was your experience? So most people I speak to, they've been to Paris, and there's always two versions, right? So either I have the version, well, Parisians were horrible, they were so rude, I hated it, or Parisians were so nice, I had the best time. And always the difference between those two people are the people that just made the effort to say a few words in French. And that's it. You don't need to speak French, fluently, but just the fact that you're making an effort to go toward the other culture makes a whole world of a difference. And I think that's, even though they all speak English, that's not the issue. The issue is making an effort, being curious, and being vulnerable too. Showing that, yeah, you come from the culture, but you're here to learn. I think that makes a big difference.
Very nice, very nice. And Yoshi, would like also your thoughts on the same point, the English language point.
Yeah, I completely agree with both Laverne and Ellen. But I would like to make the case that, if there are more and more people speaking English, it's even more critical, I think, that people be able to kind of navigate through the cultural differences and kind of different communication styles. As if more people are speaking English, that means that there are more types of people from different backgrounds, different countries, different cultures speaking English too. So English may not be their first language, it could be their second, third, fourth language, right? So I think it's even more critical with people wanting to communicate with English speakers that you have to be able to navigate the kind of underlying cultural differences and be able to understand the different customs and different communication styles to be able to, be able to communicate effectively. Kind of go back to my example of, just because language, another language, you might get tacos or you might get vinegar and pickled octopus, right? So just because you know a language doesn't mean that you can communicate effectively. So there's a whole lot of different examples you can talk to. And with your example about Toto too, right? Toto is a Japanese, actually high-tech toilet manufacturing company that has facilities here in Georgia. But just because you can kind of talk about different kind of high-tech information and things like that, you don't understand the kind of the culture behind it and kind of different things that is a normal thing to happen in Japan that spot here in the US. So there's a lot, I guess, that you can kind of make sure that you understand culturally, but I think it's even more important now these days.
Very good, very well said. And I like that point, Yoshi. It's more than ever, and I think so. It's the other way around. Just because more people, more culture, and English has become an easier tool, as Laverne said, it's really more of a tool to communicate than anything else. It is not the cultural competence. So I think we have to distinguish between the two. but I think there's a greater need for more understanding and more cultural competence. Very well said. And Ellen, just a reflection on your point about you have to, if you could try a little hard, a little, just give it a shot. And I teach, in China. I walked in and I know the very big difference in the culture of my class. When I walked in, I said "ni hao." Everybody was thrown, and that changed the whole dynamic of the class. Just one little word. That's the extent of my Chinese there, right there.
But that's all it takes.
That's what, and just remind me of that example when you said that's all it takes. Sometimes just saying hello, it shows that you respect someone and that you are willing to, make an effort. It's and that I could see the change in the students' faces, when they were sitting there. So very well said. Thank you. All right, we have maybe another 5 minutes or so before we go to the questions from our student attendees. And I would like to end with advice. And I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Laverne, and ask you, what advice can you give to a young rising student to ensure they succeed in a culturally different setting?
Well, my advice to young rising students would be, first, to be patient. To be willing to learn. The world is such a big, beautiful place full of amazing people and different cultures. And there's just so much that you can open yourself to if you're patient and willing to learn and to exchange information in any way that you can.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you. And I'm going to ask Ellen to follow up on the advice you might give young rising students.
I would give 2 advice. So one is get outside your comfort zone. It's never easy. Like I remember when I found myself in the middle of nowhere in Australia, or on a military camp with Khmer soldiers where I had to teach French, I was always thinking, why did I do that? Like I was very happy where I was, but then those were the most enriching, beautiful human experience I've ever had. So yeah, get outside your comfort zone and travel, but travel with a growth mindset. Because it's one thing to have a picture of you in Paris with the Eiffel Tower in the background. It's another thing to have experienced the culture.
Very good, very nice, good advice. And Yoshi, also your advice for young students here, many of them are with us today.
Yeah, I completely agree. But kind of to add on to everyone's points, be active in your community. For students, especially, intern at an international organization, volunteer at events, meet as many people from different backgrounds as possible to expand your knowledge, expand your cultural understanding of the world, and how, people are all, and I think Laverne said this earlier, but, we have more similarities and differences in the world, right? So kind of start understanding how kind of the people around the globe, we are all interconnected, right? And I think the best way to kind of understand that and the best way to live that is to meet as many people as possible. As Ellen said, get out of your comfort zone. Have as many different types of experiences as possible. You never know who you're going to meet when you do different types of things. I know currently with the pandemic, it's difficult to go out to events or even intern or volunteer at different organizations. But there's a lot of different webinars and online tools out there, virtual types of meetings and kind of networking opportunities out there. So for students, just because it's kind of a crazy time right now, that doesn't mean that just to kind of lock yourself up in your dorms and not go anywhere. But certainly concentrate on your studies, but go out and try to meet as many people and be involved in the community. And that's the best way to improve and experience different cultures around the world. And that's the best way, I think, to be able to grow as a person. As Ellen said, you need to travel with growth in your mindset. So you can travel within your own community and kind of just try to experience as much as you can. So that's my, I guess, number one advice for people.
Very good, very good. I think travel obviously is an important one, and you touch upon that. And I know things are difficult right now when we talk about travel. You know, we're experiencing a pandemic, but I know some of my students mentioned how much universities like ours, Georgia State University, and how much it offers in terms of cross-cultural interaction. We have the Pakistani Student Association, the Turkish Student Association, the Chinese Student Association, and these are very active groups, and they are very proud of their cultures, and they do these events. And I know some of my students said, you know, I by chance, I attended, this is a real example, my most recent one, they attended a Pakistani Student Association event. And they enjoy the Pakistani food, and they enjoy the music, and they enjoy the culture. There's, especially at university level, you will see how many opportunities you will have to experience cross-cultural interactions, sometimes without that element of travel. And we are fortunate, obviously, Atlanta is quite international. We have communities, you know, especially just drive up Beaufort Highway, you know, so I live very close to it, and that's my favorite place. You feel like you are really experiencing so many different cultures and many of these family-owned businesses and restaurants. So yes, you know, we cannot travel, but there's, you know, opportunities for us to be engaged, obviously, you know. And GSU, I think, is a place that offers so much of those opportunities. Very well. I would like for us now to take a look at some of the questions. I have some of them here, and I see some on the Q&A, so I'm going to go there. And yes, I'm going to go here. I think to this question, and it's a popular question here. For some reason, I'm going to ask you, Yoshi, to start this one here. What has been the most culture shock professional encounter you have come across? So think of a culture shock.
There have been so many, but maybe one in particular is it's culture shock. You know, I knew this a little bit, you know, in different business settings about, you know, how much relationships matter, and you know, how much business occurs away from the office too, I guess, is a culture shock. I mean, you know, it's almost common sense, but you know, until you experience it, I guess you don't understand the magnitude of it. So you know, so for example, you know, culture shock, you know, I always knew that having relationships, you know, within the business setting is very important. But then you know, I think understanding that a lot of the relationship building happens outside the office is really important. You know, within the Japanese business environment, you know, meetings and different happenings within the office is kind of more technicalities, and it's actually kind of formalities, right? And actually a lot of the different things that are brought up in meetings, different things that are decided in meetings actually happen, you know, weeks on end beforehand outside of the office. So when people have, you know, business dinners or have kind of business outings outside of the office, that's when a lot of the kind of the big things, whether it's a big business deal or kind of different, you know, partnership kind of things that people agree upon, that happens outside the office. So kind of the extent to how much that is true, I guess, was a culture shock for me, even though, you know, I have background in both, you know, cultures within the US and Japan. That was, I guess, a big shock for me. And so I guess, so that's one thing. I can kind of talk on and on and on and forever about kind of different examples, but I guess that's one thing, that how much relationships matter.
Yeah. Ellen, would you like to follow up on that question?
Yeah, I mean, same as you, Yoshi. I have so many examples, but I'll take one professional example. So one day we had a client who called us and he said, well, we just had our yearly interview with the candidate we hired a year ago, and this morning he resigned. And I was like, well, what happened? So he said, I don't know. I mean, I just told him that, you know, about what he did. And so I digged a little, and I said, well, what did you tell him? And then, so in his perspective, he said positive thing. And then when I called the candidate, it was like, well, he told me I wasn't doing a good job, so I just left. I was like, because in the French culture, we're so negative. So when you're being told that's not too bad, that actually means that's excellent in French. Like if you're being told that's not too bad, it means it's really good. Because we never say it's excellent or it's great, you're amazing. We would never say that. And so what the candidate heard is, I'm not good. And what the French manager was trying to say is, we're very happy with what you're doing. So it takes a lot to really understand how we communicate and yeah, what's just is a cultural differences. But that was the biggest shock, because I was under the impression he was happy with the company, and I didn't understand why he resigned from one day to another. But those things can be very sensitive and need to be paid attention to.
Yep. Laver, would you
he
like to
came
add?
back, by the way. He came back.
Oh, that's good to know. That's good to know. Laver?
Actually, I touched on it earlier during the panel when I worked with the gentleman from South Africa. I mean, growing up in the United States in certain generations, it is perfectly normal to have a woman in a position of authority who communicates for our organization. And I think that was the most shocking thing for me, because I was pretty young in my current duties as assistant director, and that was a shock for me personally. And again, we were able to work it out, but that was a big shock for me.
Very good, very good. We have another popular question. I think we touched upon this one for the most part, but in case you have anything to add, one of the questions here: what has been the most how does one use cultural knowledge as a strength to add to a resume? Can that make you any more employable? So this is kind of relate to what we said, but if you want to add something, obviously our population are concerned about those elements in terms of employability and career advancement. Maybe Hélène, this is kind of related specifically to talent acquisition, so this is something up your alley.
Yeah, so actually that's a really good question, because in my job, we only look at candidates that have that intercultural competence. And so on a resume, I often speak to people that speak another language and it's not listed on their resume. And I'm like, well, you have to have it on your resume. But any experience that you have outside of the United States, or where you were engaged in an intercultural, you have to list it on your resume. It doesn't have to be 10, lines about it. But when you're students and you don't have such a long professional experience, it's important to list your internship, or if you had a semester abroad. That's something that I will pick up when I source for profile. I look for that for people that have had that kind of experience. And then I will ask a lot of questions during the interview. Well, you went for a semester in France, okay. Who did you stay with? How did you, confront yourself to the culture? Because sometimes I speak to students who've been in France at the Metz campus, but they were with Americans the whole time and they spoke English the whole time. So those are things that will come in the interviewing process. But in the resume, I like to see where you have been exposed to another culture and how you have used or learned about intercultural competence. And if it's a course that you've done at university, it's also interesting. I'll definitely look at that too.
Very good, very good. I'd like to touch upon as many questions as we can. So I'm going to move to another question, if you don't mind. And I'm going to ask maybe Yoshi, if you can address this one. How can you develop cultural intelligence and familiarity without traveling or studying abroad? I know you touched upon some of these items, but if anyone, Yoshi or others, have other ideas, and I think this is a very popular question here in terms of how can we develop that cultural intelligence without traveling and participating study abroad.
Yeah, and I think Ellen touched up on it too, and I'll kind of elaborate your previous question too. But
Sure.
but I mean, intern at different international organizations, volunteer at events, international events. That way you have kind of maximize your experience with different cultures. I think that's the easiest way. I know things are difficult right now, but a lot of different chambers of commerces. I know you mentioned the different student organizations, our organization and different nonprofits. We're still active, and there are a lot of events happening to kind of bring people together online. So, go out and, a lot of these online events are free. So just go out and participate in these events and kind of get to know the different organizations and different, I think types of people and community organizations there are. And, you know, when things do go back to normal, you can kind of do things more and more in person. And I think that's the best way to be able to travel without traveling, if that makes sense, kind of within your own community, right? So, and just to add on to your previous question, how do you, I guess, put down on your resume about your intercultural competence and communication? Right, there are different tests that you can take. One in particular comes up to mind is the IDI, which is the Intercultural Development Inventory Test, and you can kind of look that up. But there's different trainings and different things that you can do online as well as in person to kind of increase your intercultural competence knowledge. So just so go out there and I guess experience as much as you can within your community. And then there are a lot of online resources that I just talked about, like the IDI self-assessment too.
And I would like to, if it's okay, I would like to add to how do you you get more experiences with different cultures without traveling. In addition to volunteering at the events, contact your local consul general's office in your cities, because they often put on a lot of events and they have classes and seminars within the community. And if you work with your local consul generals, that'll also give you an opportunity to experience other cultures without having to travel.
Very good, very good. And Laverne, I want to start with you on this question also that moved up the list. What are some of the things that you guys like and do not like about your job? Also, I'm an international business minor, good job. We offer that minor. And I was wondering if you are accepting interns and how can they apply? So what do you like and you do not like about your job? And if you are taking interns, Laverne.
I actually, I love most things about my job. I love being able to work with the international artists. I love being able to experience their cultures. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes if we have a great relationship, they might be in the know about something from their community that's happening in the city of Atlanta. And they'll say, hey, Laverne, we're going to this place after the show. We would love if you came with us. Here's the address, meet us there. And, I have had some of the best experiences post-show after all of the business is done. We've been invited to parties and dance events, and just getting to know people and be friends with them. The thing I don't like most about my job, sometimes it's long hours. Sometimes you will work a 16-hour day working events and you turn around the next day and you work another 8 hours. So sometimes the hours are long, but it is completely worth it. And as for interns, unfortunately, right now we're not accepting interns, but because of COVID-19, of course. Mm-hmm. But if you go to the Rialto's website, rialto.gsu.edu, we do accept interns during, I don't know what normal is at this point, but during non-COVID times, we do accept interns.
Thank you. Elaine, and maybe then Yoshi, if you would like to share what you like the most and you don't like about your job and the question about internships.
So what I like the most is what I don't like as well. I love to be the bridge between the different cultures. It's amazing. It's enriching. It can also be draining and frustrating because you think you have explained how it works. And then at the end of the process, somehow, like, for example, when it comes to the offer letter in the United States, it has to be fast. Like we have 2 weeks. And in France, it's a much longer process. So yeah, sometimes it's hard to always be patient, but I do try my best. but it's an amazing job that I have because I can really use my previous experience as the director of the Alliance Française and my different experience abroad. So I mean, it's very enriching. It's challenging for sure. And then interns, we do take interns sometimes. It will be, so I'm talking about the French desk. So there are different desks in my company related to different European countries. So We usually have an intern that is here with us for 6 months. It needs to be a person who speaks French fluently, though, because there's a lot of calls with friends.
Yes. And Yoshi, would you like to add to that the discussion about what you like the most and the least?
Yeah, I think even though Laverne, Ellen, and I all have different backgrounds, I think we have very similarities into that. What they said, 100% with me as well. Very rewarding in the job that I do in bringing together Japanese and Americans, but at the same time, a lot of long hours, a time difference. Right now, it's a 13-hour time difference between Japan and Georgia. In November, after the daylight savings, it'll be 14 hours, right? So sometimes there'll be meetings late at night or very, very early in the morning, which I'm glad to be part of. But at the same time, there's a lot of them kind of back to back. It's kind of frustrating too, and it's. I think intercultural understanding and communication also is a double-edged sword in that, I love it, but at the same time, it gets frustrating when, the expectations that you have for certain people may not be the expectations they have for you too, right? And just because I have, background in kind of 2 different cultures, it gets challenging sometimes in that, I understand, these things and these value systems. Why can't my counterpart understand the same thing? Or more so, when there's different projects involved, why is it that, our counterparts, they have very, very strict, expectations on, kind of delivery of different assignments or different parts of the project. Why can't they be a little bit more flexible, when we're doing the same thing too, right? So it goes both ways, so I guess it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, but yeah, like everyone said, it's all worth it. Certainly I feel like, we're making a difference in the world. So I think there's definitely some value in that and kind of very rewarding at the end of the day. And then, yes, we do offer internships as well, whether it's for credit or just for experience. And actually, we have one Georgia State student right now interning with us virtually. So she does a whole lot for us with kind of social media management, marketing, and things like that. Just online, we meet kind of virtually here and there, and kind of we assign different projects for her to work on virtually. But if you can visit our website at www.jasgeorgia, or just search for Japan, Georgia, our organization will pop right up. But you can learn about our internship program. And then, we do have a very extensive network of both Japanese and American companies. Some very large, like the Coca-Cola, Aflac, YKK, Totos of the world, Panasonic, Kubota. So, being part of our organization is a gateway into a lot of those businesses and a lot of the companies within our network. So a lot of times those companies will be hiring interns as well. So not only with our organization, we can help out with kind of professional development and internship opportunities within our network too.
Very good, very good. Well, I want to thank you. I want to be respectful of time and the commitments of our panelists and our attendees. Thank you for such an engaging discussion. Elaine, Yoshi, Laverne, it was a pleasure chatting with you about such important topics. This concludes today the Cultural Competence Panel. A few notes to keep in mind. A reminder that the recordings of all the panel discussions this week will be made available on the CULTR website after the event. Keep the conversation going and share your experience in the post-event survey on the website. We'd love to hear from you. Join us for the next panel, student panel on foreign language area studies. This is going to be moderated by my colleague, Diane Renrath of Atlanta Global Studies Center. And on behalf of CULTR, I want to thank our panelists and all the attendees, and I hope to see you soon in another exciting event. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merci.
Thank you so much.
Au revoir.